Scott Peterson, welcome to our Insights podcast, my dude.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
I'm super stoked to have you. I got, so your Veracity Solutions on Instagram. You may not need a lot of introduction if you're into the distance shooting thing. People probably know who you are. But if they're not into that, you're kind of a newcomer onto the scene for a lot of reasons with regard to like the social media thing and kind of what's going on out there. I want to talk to you about that, but you are no newcomer to the scene of shooting. And, but there's a lot of other things I want to talk about. I want to talk about a little bit of shooting today with you, but I don't want to make it all about that. I want to know about you and kind of what's been going on with you and how you kind of got to where you're at now and where things are going. Cause I think it's an interesting story. So
well, I appreciate it. I'm glad somebody finds it interesting.
Well, thanks for coming. I mean, just a little background for folks. I met you last May-ish. I was out in Blakely, Georgia, at the arena shooting facility. Was hanging out with Fred and Mike, and they were teaching a distance carbine course out there, and with a whole host of characters. And
it's a good crew.
Yeah, I had no idea what to expect with regard to that. But by the time I was done with that week that I spent kind of traveling, I had met so many good people and so much talent, all concentrated in one place. It was a little overwhelming, and it was very, very early, kind of in the beginning stages of me understanding stuff. And you happened to be there that week, right? Like you'd come down, and we got to spend a little time together. But it was kind of just this confluence of events. And so I've always wanted to sit down with you since, and here we are.
Yeah, man, we've had a lot of phone conversations. That thing was last minute for me. It was like the day before, or the evening before, I told Mike, hey, I'm going to come down. So all the things we've talked about, we're going to talk about them in person too, and I got to see some of his course and meet you guys and Mark and a few other guys that I already knew that were there. And that was, it's actually led me to more friendships. So now Mike and Fred, I try to talk to them as much as possible.
Yeah, right.
Mike's the more talkative one. But yeah, I like them. They're good people.
I don't know. You get Fred going on some stuff like, outer space aliens, what's going on under the ocean.
Like, everybody's got their passion.
Yeah. He'll get going. But so just, to kind of get it kicked off, thank you for taking time out. We're here at SHOT Show 2024. We're in Las Vegas. If either of you or anybody out there that listens to the show or knows me or knows Scott, it probably sounds like we've been sucking on a tailpipe for the last couple days. It's so loud here. Everybody's screaming at one another in loud places. So my voice is going.
Yeah, same. It's like, I feel fine. I don't have the crud yet, but just being out yelling at, during the day, trying to have conversations and go dinner or lunch, just even normal conversations is rough. So
it's wild. So bear with us. That said, again, so that takes care of sort of the pleasantries. I want to kind of just get right into this conversation to find out a little bit more about you. Like, we've had lots of phone conversations and they've been in passing. You're driving somewhere, I'm driving somewhere, and we're trying to, kind of handle a topic or something. But just to give a little background on you, you can start and finish this kind of wherever you'd like, but you've been heavily involved in the distance shooting scene for a very, very long time. And I want to get there, but I want to hear how you got there. So shoot, dude.
Yeah, man. So joined the Marine Corps in 2004 and just had grown up shooting, hunting.
Yep.
Didn't really, do much with pistols or anything like that. I'd shot a pistol maybe 2 or 3 times growing up, like 22s and stuff. And other than that, I got into, spent like 1 year where we had the Alabama State Games, as they called it.
So it's like Alabama is where this started.
Yeah,
okay,
so it started in Alabama. But when I was like 12, my grandfather took me into a range and we were messing around with some guns. And then they were having, like that weekend, they were having this competition. So as a kid, I went there. It was the only time I ever competed. But I was always, and I got like, these 4-H girls just beat the crap out of me in this little 10-yard or 10-meter like air rifle. Like I'm shooting a pump 22, Rossi pump 22.
Oh, that's wild. That's wild. It's the first gun I got when I was 10 years old.
Yeah. And so I'm shooting that thing and they're blink, 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 with these 10-22s all souped up. The little silhouettes is what we were shooting. Anyway, so fast forward to from that, did that a couple times, and I got beat, but then I went back the following year. So I only went back again, and I won a gold medal with it, which is was cool. It was like 20 or 30 people competing, but it was cool. And but I've always been super competitive, even if football, baseball, hell, I even got into video games, like playing competitive LAN tournaments and first-person shooters.
I missed all that, man. Yeah.
I can't have a hobby because it turns into
an obsession.
Yeah, an obsession. So joined in 2004, did a few deployments, came back and got married, moved to Hawaii. And I spent some time out there, went to the range one day, qualified on the range annual qualification, and I set the range record for a rifle. What
were you doing? Like, what was the MOS?
I was an Amtrak or AAV mechanic. So I was a diesel mechanic working on track vehicles.
Got it. Okay.
And so, it's where I started with that job to where I am now. People are like, you're not a sniper, or you're not this or that. I'm like, no, man, I started as a diesel mechanic.
I feel like you did tell me that, and I'd forgotten that. So, okay. So then you go to Hawaii. You go out to just do a general qualification.
Yep, just our normal annual qualification in the Marine Corps.
Everybody has to know everybody's a marksman.
Yeah, right? So they think they are.
That's what they like to say.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But yes, you do like a week of dry firing and stuff. They call it snap in or grass week.
Yep.
So in the Marine Corps, you do that for a week and you're just, clicking at barrels, but it really reinforces that whole dry fire thing, and putting reps in. And so, it's Hawaii, it's summer, it's hot, people are just dying out there and laying in the grass. And then the next week is all rifle range week. And there's some pistol in there if you carry a pistol. But I'd set the range record.
For what? For
rifle qualification.
So tell me about what's the record? Like, what was the
call? It's been beaten now, but this stuff, general rifle, they've changed it. But back then, this was 2008. And it was a 200 yard, 300 yard, and 500 yards. So you'd shoot some standing, kneeling, sitting, positional. It's still using old green web slings back then.
Okay.
Iron sights.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
It was even before we were starting to really get ACOGs. And did that. And I came back to the unit. I didn't think nothing of it. I didn't really know that I'd even did it. But I knew I did well. I had like a 247 out of a 250 on the qual. And at the time, I think the record for the range was like a 245 or something like that.
Okay.
And so I did that, came back to my unit, and somebody told I was a mechanic, so I had a maintenance officer. So he's a chief officer that he, oversaw all the Marines and stuff that did all the different maintenances that were under that unit. And he did competitive shooting, and I noticed he had like some B8 targets. He shot like the one-handed bullseye pistol shooting and stuff like they shoot. They've done it for 100 years. And so he had these targets up behind his desk. And he started talking about it. He's like, hey, I heard you did pretty well in the range and stuff. And I'm like,
did I?
I don't know. Yeah, did I high score? Did I break it? And no, but I didn't know, but he had been on the Marine Corps shooting team and other things. And he's like, well, we have a unit shooting team in these division matches. And he started talking about some matches. And I'm like, the Marine Corps has shooting teams? And this Hawaii was where I started playing like softball, stuff like that. I'd always played baseball. And then it just, again, hobbies turned into a session. So I like made the all Hawaii softball team.
Okay.
And I started at my unit and then same thing. So this happens. I go shoot these division matches and I did really well at rifle. Placed like, I don't know, I was like 10th out of 100 and something people on the rifle. But the pistol, and the reason I mentioned pistol earlier, there was like 30 shots. I think I hit the target 6 times. And which I was embarrassed by that. Like how I'm super competitive in certain things. And like, I was very frustrated. And so what that allowed me to do was I came back and he was like, wow, you suck, and that's his baby. He does pistol. He didn't really care about rifle. Mm-hmm. And so that was his baby. And I was like, well, I want to go work with the range. Like I've got to get better at pistol. How can I do that? We're in Hawaii. So it's like, gun laws and different things like that. Mm-hmm. It can make things, especially living on base at the time. It's harder you always got to have everything registered. It was just kind of a pain. And we would do a temporary assigned duty for Marines out to different areas. Like you could go work the front gate with MPs, you go work at the range or things.
Okay.
For about 6 months. So I went out to the range for 6 months and ended up getting put on the pistol range. So I ran as like the NCIC at the time as a sergeant.
Couldn't shoot, but you got to run the range.
So
ain't that the common tale?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. But again, like it's just crazy how some things just happen and things fall in line.
I'm fascinated by this story. Keep going.
The door's open. And so I go to the range. I'm now working the pistol range. And there was a gentleman there. I didn't really know him. He was civilian. I guess, later on I found out he was in the Army National Guard. Army Reserves, but he was a civilian working at the range, and he would come out and shoot pistol. And this dude would do like amazing things, 2-handed, 1-handed, didn't matter. He did all kinds of stuff. and I just watch him. And then one day, he'd never seen me shoot, but he'd had a qual with the pistol to get up there, and it was the first time I'd qualled with a pistol. Even before I shot that competition, I'd never had a pistol qual.
Okay.
And so it didn't go that well. But I actually had to, they call it unqualified. I actually had to refire the pistol qual. And again, now I'm like embarrassed, and I'm the dude that runs this range. I'm like calling, the commands and all this stuff for the range. And so I'm sitting in the back office one day. It's like, almost 4:30, time to like almost go home or whatever. And he comes in and he tosses me a Beretta, like this little dry fire trainer pistol that he had from, it was full metal, almost like an air pistol, but it was essentially just, I think he had got it from Beretta. They like demilled a pistol, so it just had trigger and hammer.
Neat.
The barrel was welded up, and
Right.
he just used it for dry fire, functional dry fire. And that at the time, that's what we were issued, was the M9. And he's like, he just tosses it to me, or not say toss it, he puts it on the table, kind of like says, and just walks away. He says dry fire and walks away. And I'm like, what? Like, this is, I think, 2009 at the time. So it's not like I'm flipping through, watching TikTok or something. I'm back there reading a book, and I remember that. About 20 minutes later, he comes back, and the pistol hasn't moved. I'm like going through stuff, I'm reading my little book and whatnot. And he's like, kind of like, hey, motherfucker, get up, you suck, and then just, and he didn't say that specifically, but that's what I heard.
Yeah,
and so he's like, I'm going to work with you. And a guy named Keith Sanderson, he retired. But what I found out later is he was in the Marine Corps, made the Marine Corps shooting team. Then from there, came to the Army and went to the Army Marksmanship unit, and then wanted to do other things. And he's just always into something. So he ended up going to the Army Reserves, was on the Olympic team for rapid fire pistols. So they do, they still do it, but it was like 25 meters. And it's like 5 shots in so many seconds and stuff like that. It's all one-handed, just iron sights, bullseye stuff. And there's so many disciplines that they have through that. But he could do stuff. It didn't matter. 2 hands, one-handed. I mean, it was wild. I watched a guy shoot a running mongoose one-handed at 25 yards one time. Just, he's like shooting his target like a string of fire, and mongoose runs by, and it's like boom, boom, pow, back to the target.
Right back to the
and
target.
It's like 4 X's and a dead mongoose out of 5 shots. I'm like just stuff like that. So especially then, where I was impressionable and something new that I was not good at. And
with the OCD thing.
Yeah. I wish I could say I was OCD about everything, but and yeah, so he kept pushing me and pushed me, and I couldn't fire a pistol for a month. He would not let me shoot a pistol. I dry fired, and I mean blank wall, just dry firing. And at this time, I did 2-handed and one-handed because it was the qual that I was going after, so I needed to shoot 2-handed. His expertise was more in the NRA, CMP, and Olympic stuff that's one-handed. But man, he was relentless, and he's a character. If he hears this, he can be a bitter pill because he's kind of abrasive, but it's his way of saying like, do better, and this is something that he's passionate about. And kind of going back to like, Joe talked about the pieces of the pie, right? So like this guy chart, this guy's piece was one, shooting. And he was really good at it, and he made sure that like to help everybody he could. And so that kind of set me off to also try to get better, but also every time I learn something, give it away, like share the knowledge, because it doesn't make anybody else better if I'm just gatekeeping everything. And so that's been a big thing for me out through that career. But I got better. About 9 months later, so we went back to this division match, and I won the whole thing, rifle, pistol, all of it. And that was pretty awesome.
That's the beginning of the end.
And that was it. And then through him, I found out there's a Marine Corps shooting team. So I'm like, and that's in Quantico, Virginia. And I was like, I'm gonna make that team. And some of the guys there were like, nah, you're not. Whatever. Those guys will smoke you, And they did. So, but long story short, I made that team. Went out and shot with them for a summer for a 3-month tour. We shot. This was all the old school like sling canvas jackets, sling rifle shooting and stuff like that. So I made the rifle team.
So hold on, time out for a second. So what does this look like? So when you make a team like that, what does life look like in the Marine Corps? While you're doing this.
Yeah. So what I did then, we had the division matches, and they would have 4 events a year. So you'd have West Coast, East Coast, like Camp Lejeune would have it, Camp Pendleton would have it. Then you'd have one out in Okinawa, the Far East matches, and then you had the Pacific Division matches, which was Hawaii. So those are the 4 things. And
all you're doing is shooting.
Yeah, man. Shooting.
So the diesel mechanic thing, you don't have to get
quit turning wrenches. No, it's 4 to 5+ days a week, 8 hours on the range, live fire, dry fire, shooting, we still we still dry fired a lot. And we would do different drills. Like, and again, this is all the old sling style shooting, like where they're really stressing fundamentals or shot process and all that, really breaking down the purest form of like sight alignment and trigger control, both rifle and pistol.
Yeah. This isn't a lifestyle. This is a life.
Yeah, man. And everybody has, again, passion where, yours being the gym and stuff like that. And it's that all day long, 5 days, sometimes 7 days a week, because the competitions we shot were mostly civilian competitions. So they're on the weekends. Right. And so, but we trained Monday through Friday, and we rarely got, I did like 62 days straight, without a day off that summer. And that's throwing in there the travel days and stuff. Cause I'm not at home, my family's in Hawaii. I went out to Quantico, spent 3 months there, while my wife was pregnant. So wow. I actually flew down, they went to Alabama, roll tide, but, they were back in Alabama. So I actually had a match in Tennessee, or the team had a match in Tennessee. So I flew down to Mobile. She had my son.
So you were there.
Yeah.
So,
and
you made it.
I was there for 7 days, and I flew back up to Pennsylvania or West Virginia. Some of the guys picked me up from Tennessee and immediately rolled into a match in Pennsylvania. And, but she's been great. She knew my passion for this, and this is what I really wanted to do. And she'd been with me through like the sports things and
little obsessions.
My little obsessions. Yeah. And, she's an amazing woman, but she followed me up through that and supported me. And so I'm like, I'm going to make this team and we're going to move to Virginia. And like, before I even like brought it up to them. And so that summer went well after those 3 months, going around to like Camp Perry, shooting the national championships and stuff, which was again, you have these you meet these milestones and goals that you may set, and like, there's things called a distinguished shooter. So in that world, you have a distinguished rifleman and distinguished pistol shot badges. There's also a third one for international distinguished, which could be like, that's where most of the Olympians get, whether it be shotgun, air rifle, small bore, stuff like that. But like, these medals to me were, not to announce them, they're kind of like trinkets. Like, that wasn't the goal. The goal was like to win, because you can be awarded these badges by accumulating points. But they don't, it tells you that you have mastered something. Like, when you did an interview with Mark about being a grandmaster, like there's high, they call it high master in that. And so there's different milestones you'll hit, but, those weren't the goals. Like, I wanted to win everything, and, the first match I went to that summer was out in North Carolina, a civilian match, but it's on Camp Butner in North Carolina, on a little small, guard base. And I was squatted with a guy from the Army Marksmanship unit, and I didn't know, but this guy was like the best. Period.
The top shooter that in that unit.
He moved on. He's actually retiring, and like, I think his retirement ceremony is today. But he followed on to be the greatest service rifle shooter that has ever been.
Wow. And
he squatted with me, and I was in the Marine Corps team, so they're kind of like, hey, don't talk to the Army, they're, inter-service rivalries and things like that. And
it's the enemy.
And I'm like, and I've been told this, and I squatted with this guy, and I'm watching him shoot, and I'm just like, well, that goal of winning is looking a little grim now.
It's a little steep.
And, but, and I spent that summer just like that, with that burned in my head. Like, I've got to be on that level. But this dude, I didn't realize this dude's been doing this for like 12 years at this point. I'm like, wow, man,
that perception piece is interesting. We could talk about that, just sort of in how people are trying to accelerate their journey to success and to the top of the heap. And you're already setting it up right now, but the reality of that is, right?
Yeah. And so, when with the goals and all that, like having realistic and attainable goals, having the one that is somewhat unrealistic. I won't say completely, but it gives you something to strive for.
High. It's a high.
It's a high one. It's the one maybe that's a 5-year plan, right? But having just like, man, like I go to matches now where like number one goal, don't get disqualified. Be safe. Don't shoot somebody. Don't shoot yourself. Just don't do anything silly or stupid, and always be cognizant of what you're doing. Like, that's a goal. People don't realize that. Like, the goal to drive home is to make it home. Yep. Like to not have a wreck, to not, do anything stupid or whatever. People don't realize like the goal. Sometimes goals are just meaning little things like that.
Well, they all stack up too as you start to achieve them.
Yeah. And with your goals, with the gym and the podcast and everything, it's awesome.
You got to take the wins.
You have a passion for it.
Yep.
But, so I'm all that, and I kind of going back to the excited part of it. So I make it to this Camp Perry, which is like they've been doing matches there in this form I think like 1907 or 1913, somewhere around there. This is where all this stuff has been kind of
some nostalgia.
Yeah, and they used to call it the Creedmoor matches, and people talk about 6.5 Creedmoor, and they just think of like it's 15 years old. Actually, the Creedmoor was way like in the late 1800s up in like Seagirt, New Jersey, and stuff, where this stuff really started before Camp Perry. And there's so much history to it, and the Marine Corps is very big on tradition and customs, courtesies, and history. And I go to this thing, and I remember standing there, and I'm shooting like we shot standing, so it's standing offhand. You got it's summer, it's July. In Ohio on Lake Erie, like the impact zone is Lake Erie, is Lake Erie. It's just flat. There's these every target block. The targets we're shooting at are 72-inch, so 6 foot by 6 foot square cardboard on these target carriages that you shoot a shot. It goes down. They plug it in with a shot spotter and come back up. And at this time, we're shooting all this with iron sights.
How far?
This was 200, 300, and 600. So it's kind of like the qualification for the Marine Corps, but instead of 500 yards, you're shooting 600. And so we're at this point, we're no longer shooting like rat grade M4s and M16s. We're shooting like national match 20-inch stainless, precision barrels. Guns. Yeah. They're free floated now. They're all this. I mean, even the sights are quarter minute, like they've been machined precisely to adjust the iron sights at quarter minute increments and things like that versus like one MOA clicks and stuff.
This is not an out of the box gun.
No, I mean, we're shooting, factory, we're still shooting factory ammo. Like, a lot of guys did hand load. But at that time, we were still shooting but match quality factory ammo, Black Hills, 77 stuff. The Mark 262 essentially is what it. Mark 262 was kind of derived from the national match scene, like the Mark 12s and SPR programs and all that. A lot of that came from how we had these guys in the competition scene had to tune those up.
Yep.
And I just remember standing there, and I'm like, I shoot a shot, target goes down, and I don't remember what that shot, but I'm like my third or fourth shot. And I'd shot like you're shooting on a 10X target or 10 ring target, kind of like a B8 with the pistol stuff. Just extrapolate that. It's a 12-inch black circle. That's the 9 ring. The 10 ring is 6 inches, and then the X ring is 3 inches. So you're shooting 200 yards standing iron sights, and the goal is to shoot up like a 100 with however many X's, and that's a 6-inch circle. So you're shooting 3 MOA, standing offhand with iron sights. And the wind's blowing like 15 miles an hour in this huge open field with 1,200, 1,500 people out here shooting.
So there's people listening to this who can't even fathom that because everything's.
But it's boring. It's like it is not a spectator sport.
I was just gonna say, like, this is very old school. So those same people are going, dude, that's so old school.
Yeah.
Like, why would you even?
And it's brutal, like I said. And under the canvas jacket, you're wearing a sweatshirt to help reduce chafing. But it actually regulates body temperature stuff because you're going to sweat in it. But it's breathable. It's crazy. But they wear it so you're not getting chafed by this canvas or leather jacket. And it's all like cinched up and stuff. And anybody ever seen the Olympics and stuff where they wear the weird leather stuff? It's like that, but they have rules where like it can't be so tight and everything's like regulated for the Olympics. This is like nope. It's like back. All right, lock my back in now. I can shoot standing. And anyways, I'm shooting, and I shot like I think it was a 6 or a 7. It was like 10, 9, 6, and I'm like smiling. The whole time I'm like anybody else or any other time I should be like, wow, that sucks. Like I literally just lost. Like I just wasted my 3 months to train to get here from that one shot. That was 4 points in one shot. And the guys that win this are going to drop 4 points for the whole day. Out of 500 points. For
perspective.
And the guy that won that year actually dropped 3 points for the day and set the record. And he was a Marine, but I didn't even come anywhere close.
Yeah, you were out before it started.
But I'm shooting this thing, and I'm like 10, 9, 7, or 6 or whatever. And then I'm like, yeah, this Camp Perry. This is so awesome. Yeah. 5, barely. I mean, we're talking this at this point. I've missed the center like this far. And I'm just like, whoa. And it hit me. I'm like, okay, calm down. You're in a competition. You should not fix your mind. And so that was really, I'd never been there before. And I was super amped and excited but that moment kind of hit me on the mental portion of it, like how to maintain expectations. What do we think about when we get excited or frustrated? Mm-hmm. And so oddly enough, I was so excited that the frustration of shooting bad shots didn't come in yet until later. But then, I'm into that 5th shot or so, and I look down and you shoot a shot and you go to your little data book and you kind of like you shoot and call your shot. So like I would plot where I called it on target, and then target goes down, comes back up, and I plot where it actually was. So it just kind of, it's telling you like when you're calling your shots and like with a red dot or whatever, it's like, okay, well I called that left side A zone center or whatever. And then you look and like, okay, that's where it's at. Or it either tells you like your zero's off, or maybe the wind's blowing, whatever it is. So you're trying to do all this and obviously center the group as you're shooting. And I look down, I'm like, I got a 6 and a 5 or whatever on this thing. I'm like, wow, there's 9 points.
Right.
You know, I should probably get my mind right.
Think about some
And
stuff.
so now I'm like standing there, and this is timed. You had 10 minutes to shoot 10 shots. It's super slow, but that's including, targets got to go down and come up. So you're beholden to the people in the pits to run that target pretty quickly. And I got like 2 more shots off and timed out. So now this just went terribly.
You're done.
But here I am like, this is Camp Perry, man. This is awesome,
right.
And anyways, finish out the day, and that was what they call the President's 100 match. And so I ended up being like 99th of that, of like, 1,000 people or whatever. So I'd finished out the day and like crushed the rest of the day, because it was one of those things like, okay, well, now I've got to get my mind right. And I'm really confident once I get what we call getting off our feet, once I get down and prone and sitting and things. So we finish out this courses of fire at 300 and 600, and 600 yards. So you're shooting 600 yards from a sling on essentially the 10 ring. Again, is 2 MOA. The X ring is 1. The goal is to shoot a bunch of X's, and it's all from sling. So this is also the thing, like what's capable. People talk about the MOA and things like that, minimum angle, and they don't realize these guys for 100 years have been shooting, and they've transitioned the target. The target's gotten smaller as we've gotten better with guns and ammo, but like guys are shooting like 1 to 2 MOA groups at times with a sling and iron sights at 2, 3, and 600 yards. It's wild to think about.
It's a different game.
Yes, it's truly a different game, like purest form. And, I got my mind right, fixed all that, finished out that day. And I go back and I tell some of the guys, like, yeah, man, they're like, what happened to you in standing? Because they plot your scores, and it's like, I had like a 79 or whatever, and then like 100, 100, 100. And they're like, what happened to you? Like, did the wind blow in your around? I was like, no, man.
Can't shoot.
Right? Yeah. And I was just like, dude, my mind was just not focused. But once I got off my feet, I kind of finally re-clicked it and like, okay, now I'm confident that I own the rest of this. This is mine, and that's what you're thinking in your head. You don't always tell everybody what you think in your head when you're, trying to amp yourself up. But go back, do that. And I'm like, okay, well, next year, one day I'm going to win this. I never did. I only shot it for, a few more years. But that was just that moment.
A turning point for you.
Kind of like when I met Keith, and he's like, essentially, like, you suck, practice.
Yep, pick up the gun.
And then to get better, because I didn't do well to pistol, to this moment just led to another door opening of like, I'm not a smart man from Alabama, but like I needed to learn about some mental stuff, and there's books like With Winning in Mind from Lanny Basham, that was an Olympic shooter in the AMU, or he was a civilian, sorry, but he shot with a lot of the AMU guys and whatnot way back then in like the 70s. And it led me to books like Phil Jackson's 11 Rings, how to deal, because I was on a team and I had to help coach guys throughout my career on the Marine Corps team. And I had about 20 guys that were trying to make sure that they're getting training. Everybody needs to train a little differently. Which led me to like peak periodization and these things weren't like, people told me about these things, I didn't just like find out, or make it up, but it's kind of like nothing new out there. You just got to find the things that may work. So, and I just started implementing some things here and there for myself, but also to make sure that these guys were training right, or at least from my limited experience at that time, right in my head. And I knew it worked for me, but as I kind of grew with that, I knew I could see that it didn't work for everyone.
Okay.
And so that was a whole passion, and that just kept kicking off another door to like instruction,
the coaching piece,
and you hear guys talk of different things, like they don't want to use the word instructor, they would like to use the word coach.
Yep.
I don't care what you use.
I've talked about that. Yep.
Yep. And so there is a difference in certain implements, but it does. If one day you're a coach, the next day you might be the instructor. In my mind, like it just depends on what you're trying to do.
I agree with you 100%. What's the goal?
Yeah. Yep. Right. And so it's just, man, it's been great. Which kind of just keeps leading me. I've done this almost 20 years now. I've been in the military, about to retire. And I'm doing what every former military guy in the world wants to do, is start a marksmanship training company.
Okay, so before we get there, real quick, go back for a second, because there was the shooting on the Marine Corps team, and then there's the AMU. So there was a shift, though.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, you went from, because what I understand, I don't even know if it's done yet, you're currently just in retirement, or just retired from the Army, not the Marines.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Right. Okay, so
I hate talking about myself,
so
but here we go.
Catch me up, because where did that happen? And then what did it look like?
Yeah. So, kind of going back to that being, don't talk to the AMU guys, or, don't talk, we're Marines. Let's not talk to the Army. We can beat them, kind of thing. And I'm like, realized after that summer, I got permanent orders to the team for 3 years. And so I kind of I told my wife, we're moving to Virginia. Like, it's in my head. We're, and working on that. And got to Virginia. We moved there in 2011. I spent from 2011 to 2015 on the Marine Corps shooting team, from just the first year I was just a trigger puller, man. I was just out there as a team member. We
just
had
shooting.
Just shooting. And we had some individual matches as well as team aggregate matches where you have 6 guys shooting, and it's a total team score. So we're coaching,
game.
calling win. I'm sitting there through these huge Kawa Promenade binoculars, and so it looks like it's a massive spotting scope is what it really is. Just reading mirage, reading wind, and like the purest form that I knew of at the time for marksmanship. And it's all flat range stuff. I mean, there's no like terrain to this. They're just manicured flat ranges with berms that you shoot from, into a paper target on cardboard. And I did that, which, and this is kind of like, I didn't even know about things like PRS and USPSA at the time.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound like you'd have any time to even think about any of that.
No, but I love shooting so much.
And again, there's not TikTok and all that shit, right?
Oh, so right. I think we started training. Well, we didn't TikTok, but we finally got smartphones at some point. When I worked at the range in Hawaii, I remember the guy, the first iPhone and Google phone, like T-Mobile had like this phone. I don't even remember what it's called, like the G1 or Google One or whatever.
Yeah, it was mind blowing, right?
When it came out, you're like, it freezes all the time. Yeah. You're like, I can't even make a phone call.
Yeah, we thought it was cool though.
Yeah, man. And so, I did that for a few years there, but same thing. Like, when I came back permanent, I was like, man, like me and another guy and I had kind of crested toward the top of the people that we were on the team with. We weren't the best on the team. I don't want to say that, but we had kind of excelled, and then they gave us the invite to come permanently and things like that. So that's how I got to be there for those few years. But I was like, man, we've got to get better. And with the Marine Corps team versus AMU, you do it for a summer and you go back to your unit, or you do it for 2 or 3 years as a primary duty.
A deployment.
Yeah, and it's just anything else. You PCS to that duty station, you do that duty station for a couple of years, and you go to somewhere else. And so I'd left Hawaii to go to Virginia, did that. But I was like, man, we got to get better. So how do we do that? Like, these Army guys are whooping our butt, and like, but it's hard to accept that as a Marine. We got to win at everything.
Fair enough.
We're going to win at getting drunk. We're going to win at fighting. We're going to win at war. We're going to win at shooting. And the Army will never be a part of that, right? Like, can't let them. But it was like, hey, man. And so that day, my first ever match, I talked to this guy. His name's Brandon Green, and he's on the AMU, retiring now. But we kind of hit it off even that day because he was from, I think, Bogalusa or down in Louisiana area. I grew up in Mobile, Alabama. And so we like fishing and we like food, the food down there, the Cajun seasonings. Sure. Like, we're just talking about life. And like, I literally got his number that day. And just, this transitions to the next year. Hey, man, I call him like, what can we do to get better? And start reaching out because, again, no need to gatekeep the information. He could have told me like, go pound sand. Yeah. No, it turned into like, hey, we can let's go to matches together. Like, our team is going to this match in here. Why don't you get your team there? And it's 20 people on each team and coaches and staff to run this stuff. And so then we just started kind of sharing the knowledge, and it made our team better for those few years that myself and a few other guys were there. That were permanent, because same thing. We only had maybe like 8 permanent guys, and every summer we would pull in 3 or 4 people from these that did well at those division matches, and bring that up. And so we started implementing some things that the AMU had done because they could be there for 20 years. They can come out of high school or college, collegiate athlete, whatever, and really? As long as they met, they have higher PT standards than the. You can't tell, but we have higher PT standards at AMU than just passing the qualification. So like 60% kind of gets you a go every year for PT quals. They do 80%, and so like if you didn't have that, you couldn't travel, you couldn't go to matches. Okay. So it makes
it's more performance based than just shooting.
Yeah, people don't think about small little things like that make you earn it. And anyway, so we started shooting with those guys and learning how they do things and approach things and how to train better, because not always just putting rounds down range and at volume was the answer. Some days we need to figure out how to calculate it. And so that just kind of kept opening more doors and friendship. And when my time was coming up on the shooting team there, it's kind of like, man, I don't want to go back to being a mechanic, and as I was about to get promoted, and I'm like, well, once I got, staff, the E6 or staff sergeant in the Marine Corps, like, I'm no longer going to kind of roll out with the vehicles. Or if we go on a deployment, I'm not going to go out with the sections and actually see anything cool like I did in Fallujah as a young Marine and all that. I'm going to be in an office as a platoon sergeant, or I'm going to be in like essentially like a parts room or tool room, like ordering parts as requisitions.
Hard transition, man.
And I was like, man, I don't want to do this. Like, I didn't even want that job when I joined, but I just knew I wanted to be in the Marine Corps. And then I ended up with that job and like, oh, this sucks. And then I really enjoyed it. because I was a diesel mechanic in high school, like as a summer jobs and side jobs. It's like I didn't join the Marine Corps to continue to be a mechanic, but that's the door that was open for me, and that's I just ended up there. But so they asked me, hey, Brandon found out that I was going to get out, and he's like, you ever thought about coming to the Army? And I'm like, no. Man, uniforms are terrible.
Say that out loud one more time.
Yeah. Like, no. He's like, oh, well, okay. And he's like, well, we get weekends off. Talking about going back to those 60s, 70s.
Yep.
So I'd spend all those summers where it's the same thing. We're training those summer shooters, we called them, those pickup shooters. And we would spend 60, 70, 80 days straight in the summer. Like when the kids are home and my wife has some free time, I'm just gone all the time. So like, we've talked about that balance before. Mm-hmm. And again, this woman has traveled the world with me. Well, not the world, but we've been to Hawaii. Gotcha. As soon as we got married, we flew straight out there. She's really never been outside Alabama for the most part, and so just dragging her around, man, and had 2 kids along the way. And now the kids are starting to get old enough, like Daddy's gone a lot. Yeah. So that was one reason I was kind of like, I don't want to stay in the Marine Corps anymore, was the end result. And it's not because I didn't enjoy the Marine Corps, but I wanted to do something with firearms. I'd looked at doing contracting, instructor side, for different agencies, being in the Nova area, or, Northern Virginia, right. Capital Region area. There's places I could have went and could have made enough money or decent living up there, training firearms. We were down the street on Quantico from the FBI Academy. You had the HRT guys there, and all that just kind of, again, just open doors and networking and all that. So I had some opportunities. And so again, I don't know, a few weeks later, phone rings, and it was a captain in the AMU, the company commander, reaching out. He said, hey, so Sergeant Green told me, hey, you're thinking about getting out of the Marine Corps, and we'd like to have you, like, we're going to be at a match that you're going to be at. We're going to Camp Perry, the national championship.
You're getting recruited.
And I'm getting recruited. And I was like, oh, man, all right, sir, cool. We'll talk when we get up there in a few weeks. So get up there, and they were kind of like sales pitching. And I'm like, look, man, you can be here. Still didn't understand I could be there for the rest of my time. This is what I would do. And so they essentially poached me out of the Marine Corps, got to move back to Alabama. So I'm in my home state.
That's what winners do, man. Winners go find other winners. And they do what they need to do.
Well, I don't know how much winning I've done, but I was truly honored to accept that position. So I did. We moved to Alabama. I kind of told my wife, and she was excited to be not necessarily back home, but close enough where, like, if the parents want to come up, they can call and they can be there in 3 hours. They're just far enough so you're not feeling overwhelmed, right. But you've got help with the family.
Yep, that's important.
And
very important.
Like my in-laws are up watching my kids right now. My wife is away on a work trip. I'm here, right. And they hop in the car and drive 3 hours and help them out. But so I came to the AMU and still on the service rifle team, still shooting the old traditional sling shooting and things like that. And we started doing more training there. So when I was in the Marine Corps team, we didn't do a ton of like training other units and things. We do some stuff. I did some positional training and stuff for some of the instructors at the sniper school at Quantico. And I kind of just started, just networking, meeting friends, and the team and the sniper school at the time I showed up there didn't have the best relationship. It was, just egos and things like that on all sides. It was, not one specific person's fault. And so that relationship started getting better because some of the guys we had on the shooting team were scout snipers in the Marine Corps. And so now they already knew these guys. Now there's commonalities. And so we built like some friendships and still talk to some of those guys today. But that kind of started really getting me into lethality and like I'm a diesel mechanic now turned shooter that's never going to go down range.
Yeah, metal to metal versus the metal to me part.
Yeah. And so I'm not going to go down range, but like, so how can I make a difference? Like, I'm not just going to goof off and shoot guns and people tell me like, oh, you got these, you're just screwing around. I'm like, well, how can I earn my paycheck? It's something I had a mentor in the Marine Corps used to ask me all the time. Like, did you earn your paycheck today? And which can mean
a lot of
different things. Mm-hmm. And so I really wanted to do what I could to give back,
to contribute.
And that started the journey of work. Anytime I could go see another unit, Ranger Battalion at Fort Benning, or like the sniper school guys. So I'm like just asking them questions like, and so I'm still shooting this traditional sling stuff. I don't know nothing about PRS or any of this stuff.
It's a game.
Yeah. And like, how can I get better at something to give back to them? Because they're leaps and bounds above where my knowledge is on that kind of stuff. And I'd been shooting long range, and we shot out to 1,000 yards with iron sights and stuff. But it's not what we weren't using kestrels. We just had like hard data, and I knew about ballistics, but I didn't really know the ballistics. And I've been a competitive shooter for 4 years at this point. And at the AMU, which a lot of people just assume everybody there knows all about this distance and everything gun wise.
There is to know, yeah.
But we have people that specialize in 10-meter air rifle shooting pellets. Like not now, they're all students of the craft and stuff, so they do extracurricular activities, but that's their job. So they may not know like some of them may not know what a kestrel is, or these devices that read atmospheric conditions. And so again, seeking knowledge I kept meeting people, and the doors kept opening to like, hey man, you're asking a question. I know the stuff to that. I'll give it to you. And I just kind of kept taking the knowledge until, finally it's like, okay, I've taken enough. Now it's got time to give back. And it wasn't just me. There was a couple of us that were like, okay, we're going to start doing more lethality stuff. And that's been a big push for me the last few years. And about 2019, I transitioned from shooting the traditional sling shooting stuff over to like precision rifle series, shooting some semi-automatic gas gun series, where, now I'm shooting steel targets out to 12, 13, 14, 1,500 yards sometimes, but primarily it's say inside of 1,200. Sometimes even shooting like a 223 that far, depending on what match we were. And these now, instead of just standing in one position, shooting those 10 shots in 10 minutes, it's a different game. It's kind of like USPSA with a long rifle. Mm-hmm. And we're shooting small, and the targets every year, they kind of get a little smaller. We as humans become better shooters in that game. Manufacturers come out.
Technology's changing.
Yeah. Manufacturers come out with better optics. And so even since 2019, it's crazy the quality of components that we've seen come about. But so I started that. And so from there, I'd had some back issues. So that was another reason I was looking to do something else. And so shooting that standing and the prone positions,
there was no longevity.
My lower back, I couldn't stand up there like that anymore. And so it's either I could coach this team, which was one of the reasons I also came to the AMU, is to take over and coach that team at some point when some people retired. And they had some internal shuffling on that team. And they had brought somebody from that had been on that team before that was running another one in to coach. And so it's like we were both going to retire about the same time. It didn't make sense to make me the coach. So it gave me again, just like at first I'm annoyed because this is what I wanted to do, but it opened up a door to another team, which is on the action shooting team. So we covered, USPSA 3-gun, IPSC. They used to even shoot IDPA and still challenge, to 2-gun stuff, to PRS. Had, a couple guys, and it's a very small, it's 9 people, 9 soldiers.
Okay.
And so I ended up doing that and shot for a little bit. Late 2019, I get over there. Well, you know what happens in early 2020? Yep. COVID. So a lot of events were getting shut down, but PRS, because it's outside shooting still targets, you're not having to interface with a lot of people, like a lot of the Olympic stuff and all that.
Group them all up.
Trips got shut down, but PRS kept going, I mean, they paused for like a month or two with everything going on. And, which what that did is it funneled some of the unit budget into us. And we started traveling again, like 2-gun, 3-gun, PRS, things like that were still open. So we just start shooting.
Okay.
And that was the real growth year for me to really understand. Like I'd spent those other formidable years right before that. I was shooting a little PRS stuff on my own, kind of learning it, learning more about ballistics, internal, external, and transitional, and all these other ballistics knowledge, using these devices, using the technology to my advantage. How can I teach that to other guys? Because a lot of snipers at this time are still going out there and shooting steel at every 50 meters. They're not utilizing the kestrel. And again, they have so many pieces of that pie, like
to work on, yeah.
And I get one. Yeah. And so internally, my pie has some slots in it, like, okay, learn about device, learn about shooting, learn about bullets, all this. But that's my main focus, and I have the time to do it.
So as you're doing this with the Army, is it just coaching the team, or are you being resourced to coach other guys doing other things? Like you mentioned, going like range battalion, like you go down there and check them out. Like, are they bringing you in to teach this, or work with the other teams? I mean, other sniper units, any of the guys from the soft side, any of that?
Yeah. So we'd had a couple guys when I transitioned over, and the AMU had always done they'd done like I think they call them SDM courses and things throughout the years for designated marksmen, as like the Mark 12 rifle was coming out.
That's what I mean.
And so we did a little bit of lethality, and then I transitioned to another team, and the action team did more of the lethality stuff. Sometimes it was just individually But right before I went over there, we had a guy named Daniel Horner who shoots for SIG and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Big, well-known 3-gun shooter. He had won some sniper competitions in the Army, him and another guy on the team. But he really kind of kicked off, from my understanding, a lot of lethality stuff for them and got them into some of these higher echelon units.
Okay.
Just where the real high performers are in shooting. And it's like, if our piece of the pie is this, then, and we're the best at it,
why wouldn't
why wouldn't we go? Our product is to make you better.
That's my whole point.
And
that's
so,
my point of my question. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got over there and kind of, again, I'm just hooked on this, right? And that thought of like giving back. So like, yeah, okay, cool. I get our mission statement is to win national and international competitions. But another part of it's also to make the soldier more lethal on the battlefield. So when are we doing that? Like, almost like they need to be 50-50 or close, because we have to be winning in competition to stay relevant and learn these things and practice to be able to transition over and teach the lethality. And we also have to be winning or doing well to have the creds, in these guys' eyes, like what warrants us to come train you.
Makes sense.
And so locally, we had a Ranger Regiment there at Fort Benning. And so this team had relationship with some of those guys. So they would come over to our ranges and train. Sometimes we'd go out to other ranges. And I'm just kind of picking all this stuff up. And I'm just sitting back. Like, I thought I was a decent instructor and stuff like that. And I'd coached service rifle, but I had some strong points like reading wind and whatnot. But some of this stuff I was just picking up because now I'm not having to stand still anymore. Now I've got to be mobile and really looking at the efficiency. And you're looking at these guys that shoot USPSA or 3-gun, like they go through all these stage plans in their head, and like they just, the way they move fluidly through a stage, and like every step is calculated. And we're talking about guys that are winning the national championships and this stuff. And so I started looking at how they moved, and because no one in PRS didn't, not really, the guys in PRS, it was still new, but they didn't worry about how they moved a whole lot. Like, they get 90 minutes or 2 minutes to shoot a few targets, like 10 targets, 8 targets, whatever.
I mean, it's the same across the board now.
And so I started looking at that because I was like, man, like, I want to go fast, like Ricky Bobby. I want to be good at this, and I want to go faster and be efficient. Because it's like, if I build the efficiency and economy of motion, that gives me more time to read the wind and make a more perfect shot.
Stealing time back.
And I think it was DeFore.
Yeah.
That talked about that. I think you and I have talked about that. That's a really good analogy. And stealing that time back by being efficient. And so again, all this keeps coming back. I'm watching them, and I start implementing that. And I'd been training with another guy on our team a lot, and same thing. Like, he didn't always say those words, but I just watch him, man. He was really good with a gas gun. He'd won all the PRS stuff one year. He'd won it all, and just watching him and starting to be like, okay, well, I can do a little faster. And then I was kind of, for a little while, I was known as there's a specific barricade in PRS that was timed, and they were like, I'd show up, and it's those little victories, right, where guys are like, well, we know who's going to win this one. I'm not even going to try to go fast on this. It's like the one-time stage in the match, and they're like, oh, Scott's here. I was like, I may not be winning the whole thing, but I'm gonna win this thing, Gotcha. But again, that kind of tricking the ego and all this to make you super confident, and that was where my confidence lied, was being a little faster than everybody else, because I wanted to win, but these goals had transitioned. Like, I want to win these things, but man, I want to give a really good product to these guys that we do go train. And so if I'm being slow and sloppy and stuff like that, but I'm still hitting targets, how does that really benefit the guy that's going down range? Because they need to be fast with it. They need to be quick with it. If be a reactionary.
The consequences of not doing that are
I mean, these steel targets aren't shooting back.
Yep.
And again, I'm never going to get shot at again, maybe unless I drive through Memphis again. But that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so that really, again, just kicked off more and more just the desire to do lethality. I shot for a year essentially with that, and then we had some transitional team. Our boss retired, or our NCIC retired. And I slid in the spot of running the team.
Right.
And so it's like, everybody has we used to joke about it when you're a young guy, like, oh, everybody's just trying to leave their legacy. And I'm like, well, I didn't think of it that way. I do now, but it was always a joke. And we kind of made fun of officers and things like that they wanted to have their mark. Well, I realized, not too long ago, that my mark was lethality. And so we started pushing more, instead of like 10% lethality for the year, 90% matches. We started getting more and more jobs, and I
with who,
guys on the East Coast.
Gotcha.
And not just Army,
units
other branches,
not to be named.
Yeah, and just some other units out there, and I was also doing the sales pitch piece, and And I joke, we don't always tell everybody, but like the joke is, we're not here to teach you tactics. We're here to teach you how to shoot people in the face better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the sales pitch, and
Gotcha.
It's got us kind of on the map, the Army Marksmanship unit on that specific side of lethality. Like, this is how we're paying the bills. Like, there's other teams within our unit that did the marketing piece, because we fall under like recruiting and all that stuff. So there's some marketing aspect to it. That's why, when I win an Olympic gold medal, they on a Wheaties box and all this other stuff, right? And they're using that for recruiting effort.
Yeah.
And so our side is more like, well, we can do that, but we can also have a greater effect
You need to
in
do
this
it on
community.
the inside. Yeah, on the inside.
And so I started seeing that again. And so it made me want to be a better instructor as well, better coach.
A higher calling.
And so that kind of really started my journey into working more with civilians as well, doing some classes on the side.
Why?
Why for what?
Why civilians? Why expanding the journey when you're working with the tier 1 guys and these crazy units and whatever else? I mean, from the outside looking in, people might think that's a little bit weird. What was driving that?
Well, initially it was mostly military and government agencies, just because that was related to the day job, of being in the Army.
Yeah.
We train the guys we can go train because they can request us and we can go do that.
Okay.
And so then on the side, like, well, one, I had a lot of friends that wanted to learn more about shooting. And so I started training, just working with my friends. And then, everybody has their calling, and we can go down the political side of the 2A, and every person should have all that. And I do believe all that. But the market for that obviously is pretty big, and people
It is
like,
now.
yeah, and there's enough to go around. I think people get a little bent out of shape about we can't all be in the same space. But
yeah. Look where we are.
Yeah,
like when I went,
look at our dinner.
That's pretty wild. I don't know how I got to that table, but yeah, I mean, we're just sitting at that table with Mark from JBS. You had Mike and Fred out there.
Yeah, Joe
Duffy was there. You had Duffy sitting on the other end of the table,
and a lot of us train in the same space. And it's like there's enough to go around, and we're all friends, but we want to have a good. It goes back to the product, right? We want the end result, that product of us, whatever we teach in our space. It'd be carbine, night vision stuff, long range, whatever. We want a good product, and we can see it in each other. It's like you gravitate to people that are like you, or that or you want to strive to be like, right? And so I started doing some civilian stuff on the side. I mostly would assist and instruct under some other names.
Okay.
And I've typically tried to be a little, not always on purpose, but a little low key as far as my name.
Well, look, that's what I was saying about being under the radar.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you were for me, like when I first met you, but how you were described to me. So you may not know who this guy is. Do you know who's got? No, I don't know who he is. He goes, well, basically, if you show up to match and he's there anywhere in the country, you're competing for second place or for third place or second or third place because this guy's going to clean up every time. So I was like, okay, Mike, whatever you say, man. And then things evolved, but I did not know. So I mean, it's parallel to what I thought and the reasons why, because you're just trying to kind of run low key. I get it.
Yeah, and everybody, like we've talked about, like before this, like some people like openly talk about their family, some people don't. It's not that I try to keep things quiet, but like I don't want all my business out there, and it's not
fair enough.
There's no real reason to hide it, but like I put a phone in a Faraday bag too. It's not I don't have nothing to hide, but I also don't want just all my information.
It's still your information,
and it's my life, and I don't want
to control it.
Yeah, and so same thing with now, funny enough, you talked about the social media piece. As I'm transitioning and doing this, I created my own little company for consulting and training.
So you're retiring?
Yeah, now I'm retiring, and this side gig to give back to just anybody that wanted, or I could find, to like tell people, like
whoever's interested.
And I'd do it for free if I could, but I do have to put food on the table. Yeah. So, but yeah.
Oh, you mean the military retirement doesn't pay off?
Looking at the numbers,
facetious.
Maybe if I transitioned over to like a single wide on a small piece of property, I could, I could live. But
I get it.
My wife might not.
You got a lifestyle. You got to. Yeah, I gotcha.
But and I know I've skipped around a little bit, but that's why I'm a little vague on certain things. It's just I don't want all the business out there, and like some of the, I've had people like just openly say like, oh well, those guys never trained these guys. It's like, I'm not getting bent out of shape over this stuff, man. Like,
right.
Cool. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. Like it doesn't. It's not trying to make me sound cool or anything. It's just that's the top's going to request the top, you know. And so you start talking to some of these other guys that they're truly high performers. It's not if I'm you and I want to learn about the gym, I'm not going to go find the guy that's in the McDonald's drive-through to teach me about being in the gym. I'm going to find the guy that owns the gym, you know, usually. And so I don't know, man. And just teaching civilians, teaching even other, you know, militaries and cops and everything else. Just I really enjoyed it. I don't know. Again, I don't do the tactics piece. I teach you how to, you know, pull the trigger better, or set your gun up better, or learn about the things I've been blessed just to know nuances of, you know, different guns sometimes need to be shot a little differently because of the nuances of how they're manufactured. And it's always something new, man. Like I come to SHOT Show and somebody comes out with something new and it might look cool, but then you start using it and like, it's got some deficiencies. So that's kind of where the consulting piece is coming in for me, is just having been blessed with these certain positions I've held for, you know, about almost 10 years now, a little over 10 years. And, you know, share that piece, not just the teaching instruction, but also on like the equipment side. And it's man, like I use that analogy of the doors keep opening. They keep freaking opening. I was just going to go get a normal day job. I looked at going back to school for cybersecurity. Odd for a South Alabama guy, but you know. And then guys are like, man, you started this little business on the side a couple of years ago with LLC to just do some, you know, assistant work.
Yep.
You know, just to have a thing where I could like write off some guns, make some money on the side.
It's a lot of people start their business, man.
And now it's turning into like, this is what I'm going to do.
So I love that. I think we may have had a conversation close to 6 months ago, you know, when we were talking about that transition and you kind of trying to figure it out and putting it out there and how do you do that? And so what I've seen you doing is, one, networking and having those conversations with like the guys at the table and getting into good discussions about stuff that matters, at least in my mind, and trying to cut out the fat of all the stuff that generally creeps in as a distraction, and a lot of that has to do with ego and, you know, I'm better than you and who has the piece of paper on the wall that says this versus what somebody else's piece of paper looks like. There's also the trying to enter into how do you market that, because that's not necessarily the sexiest way to do it when you look back on how people have gotten, you know, sort of where they are, gotten a quote unquote following or, you know, sort of an audience. It's oftentimes about being controversial or, you know, shitting on somebody else's business theories, practice, methodology to build up your own. So I've seen you doing that differently, just being you in terms of talking about what you know. And there's also a component or an element here, and hopefully this doesn't come off the wrong way, but how you just explained that whole story, or basically your whole journey, tells me it really fills in some gaps for me just about how I see you handling yourself. Like, again, in the online space, because that's how I get to consume you unless we're talking, you know, on the phone, right? Or in this kind of an environment. And it really is like, it's like again, just forgive me, stick with me here. There's almost like an innocence to it. It's like, this is what I do. This is me, right? Like, this is all I know. This is all I care to do. This is just what I want to do. So I'm just going to talk about it, right? Take it, leave it, put some shit in the comments section, you know, whatever. I don't know about that stuff because I've never had to deal with it. Like, you literally are just that dude. And I think for people kind of maybe coming across you at this point, you know, kind of new to the scene, they're not sure how to take that because you're not getting involved in all of the other things that might be distraction for both you and for them. And again, it's not because I met you in the environment that I met you in. And again, you just filled in the whole story there with regard to like, you've just been kind of moving through this journey on your own, doing your thing. There were people there that helped you. There were doors that were open. There's a little bit of luck, you know, that comes into this. Yep. There's being blessed, right? There's having a supportive wife, family, somebody that takes a chance on you, people seeing things, but there's also a performance piece. Right? Yep. It doesn't just fucking happen. No. Right? You don't get recruited by the AMU. You don't get a head coaching job at the AMU because you knew some dude who knew some dude, or it's because your dad was there, you know, first. I think that's the thing that I take away when I kind of listen to you talk and how I see you interact with people, is that this is just what you do. And there's also something here, and again, this with regard to the business end of things, and going back to our original conversation, it's just kind of dawning on me now that you have direction, but there isn't like this end goal yet. Like there isn't this, you're trying to rule the world, you're trying to be the best at this and take this title, going back to the winning and the mindset and whatever else, is just, you're just continuing on through the journey and you're seeing where it takes you. And so maybe the term isn't innocence. It's just like it's very genuine and raw and still open to be molded or whatever, versus trying to fit into a box and trying to get anybody else to fit into your box. I find that fucking refreshing. And I also find it fun to kind of watch evolve. Like, cause it is different. It is much different. You know, people hang on resumes, or, you know, there's a lot of talk about, don't tell me what you did then, tell me what you're doing now.
Yeah.
For you, it doesn't really, I think you're compelling people to find out what you're doing now, right? Versus like, let me tell you what I'm doing now and why you should listen to me, and then why you should come to my class or whatever else. It's just, no, I'm just talking about the thing that I do on a daily basis. And I think it intrigues people to maybe want to dig a little bit more. It takes a little longer to grow an audience and
it has.
build a business that way. So I don't know. I wonder what your thoughts are on that, on what I just said.
I'm maybe the worst businessman ever in the end state of this. And you talked about the goal. Like, it's open ended. Like I said, this was a side gig, you know, a few months back, 6 months ago. I was just going to do this on the weekends or when I had some time off, whatever next career job I took. And, it's now transitioned to like, this is what I'm going to do. And it's my name. Like, so with attaching my name to that, like for a while, I've had my business Instagram for a few years, but I never really used it. Like, I don't know, I had 100 followers. I still don't have a ton, you know, like, or anything. But guys like Joe and some others started sharing, you know, we'd have an offline conversation, or, hey man, I like what you're putting out, and vice versa, and just start sharing my stuff. And then because someone else has 10, 15, 30,000 people following, they share my stuff. I gain some followers through that. And then getting those DMs of like, it's kind of weird for me because I'm not used to, I love to talk, obviously, but I don't always like talking about myself. I want to talk about the knowledge that I have. And people are always asking me, so what is your background? Because they want to know who they're talking to and how, because it's their money they're going to spend with me. It's their time they're giving up away from their, you know, family or for work. So it's not always just they're paying me money. They also have to take time off work and travel. Unless I'm literally coming to them. So they're just continuously losing money.
Yeah.
Like
in a concentrated amount of time.
Yeah. Right? And it's like, so I understand they want to, know more about me. And I just try to do it with like facts. And I had somebody yesterday here. We were all like in some Facebook and they would see me on Instagram, whatever. And he told me, he's like, I love your Facebook posts when these guys start, shitting on each other on Facebook, and like these snob groups or whatever, gun snob groups they call them. And it's just a bunch of people talking shit, but they're like, you troll people with facts. And I'm thinking like, I was like, haha, yeah, cool, man. Good to meet you, in person finally. And I left walking away and I'm like, troll people with facts? Like,
what does that mean?
Is that a thing?
Yeah, what does that
Can
mean?
you troll people with facts? I thought trolling was like, and I was like, man, is that how he sees me? And then I went to dinner last night and I was telling one of the guys about it. He's like, I don't think he meant it that way, man. I think he meant it like, it's the refreshing piece. Like, you're out here actually saying what is the truth. And people like, it doesn't really garner much responses. I'll come in with something that's just like, well, this is what I've seen. This is what I do.
Because how do you respond to
and
that?
they don't call me out on it. And I'm like, but I wanted them to like, okay, well, everybody else is in
here.
here.
You're not leaving them in your room to call you out on anything because it's facts, right?
Yeah. And so but as you said that just now, them telling me that more this week as I've been here at SHOT, and I'm starting to talk to some of the people that follow me. And I didn't even know they follow me. Like sometimes some of these guys have asked me questions. Some of them are very low key. They don't have, they have their stuff private, and they're just out there absorbing the information and trying to understand what is good and what is bad or what's mediocre. But I've had multiple people.
That is the majority of the space.
Yeah.
There's a massive part of that space that is doing that very thing versus, again, we talk about trolls and we talk about people that are trying to get attention for different reasons or whatever else. The majority of people out there are just trying to find good stuff, or maybe they want to be entertained.
Yep.
or they want to be educated, or they want to be infotained, whatever the thing is. But that's still the majority of the space.
Yeah, and it's just interesting for me to navigate. As much as my wife's like, I get on the phone at 8:00 at night after dinner, and she's like, I can just see her face. Are you talking about guns again?
This is weird, right? Yeah.
You're talking about guns again, or like I'm on Instagram responding to DMs, and talking about the life balance, man. That's been an interesting, and it's been a challenge. Like, because never done drugs. I don't have it. Like, I don't know. My addictive personality has been to those hobbies that I talked about.
Yeah, the things. Okay.
You know, and it's always ends up being the competitive piece, and so her dealing with it is, I know, heavily frustrating, because I've been doing gun stuff for so long now. I still come home and talk about guns to other people, and now my job is like, now I've got to do the social media piece and then shut it off, and I've got to figure that. I'm terrible at it, because Joe and I had the conversation. He's mentioned it because he reached a threshold where like he's pushing stuff over to like Patreon and other things because he can't answer every DM. And I'm starting to get there where like, if I continue to answer every question I get, I will have no time in the day. And it's not to say, like, not to brag that I get that many DMs, because I don't, but the DMs I do get, if they get a question, sometimes I come back, well, like, I don't know if you're asking the right question, or I don't understand what you're asking. So maybe think, I'm not putting them down, but like, think about it a little bit more, come back to me. And sometimes they just come back like, man, I answered my own question after I thought about it. And cool. Some guys start wanting to just know more and more. And it's like, I'll give you my curriculum in class for free, man. That's something Mark and I have talked about at JBS. Like, everybody in the world, take all the curriculum you want. Like, I don't care, because you're not me.
Right.
There's no other Mark. There's no other Scott.
Right.
You know, and you're Scott. You know, there's no other CC. And so there's just so much out there, but you don't know the context in my head. And I think that's when you talk about genuine, like that's the genuine part of me. Might be the terrible businessman, because I'm not out there like making logos and big websites and just pushing these products and stuff. And something I've learned here as I transition out to take, potential sponsors for my personal competition, as well as, consulting on the business side, is I've had a couple guys tell me, like, if I could do it all over again when I retired or did competitive stuff, is take it a little easy for the first year. Like, go compete. It's going to be a little more expensive and on you to do it on your own, but make sure it's what you truly want to do when you're done. And this is the job you want.
You're not marrying yourself,
and you're not marrying yourself to a company. So like, because it's again going back to my name, man. I don't want my name. I don't want to bounce from company to company, and maybe that ends up happening. Maybe I don't know what it is. It's open ended, and I don't have a hard and fast rule on that. But while I am still mobile and able to move around, and not crippled, and I'm somewhat relevant, I think, in the space. As long as I have those creds for 3-4 years, maybe this is what it is. And if I can do that and that's my mark on the society with that, then so be it. Maybe in 5 years, I'm working at McDonald's. I don't know. Maybe I'm the mailman. I'm pretty indifferent on stuff. Like, I'm not going to get all fired up about it, but I just want to share what I've been blessed and fortunate to know and learn, because I didn't come up with it. I mean, there's some nuanced things that are maybe unique, and people are like, that's new. It's not really new, man. It's been around. It's like you're just taking something that an engineer figured out 30 years ago and translating it to this, and now how do you use it in shooting? We're taking the pieces from the bodybuilders and peak periodization, understanding like ebbs and flows and like when to peak, to not burn yourself out. Maybe you don't have to, you don't have to do all this volume for 12 months of the year. Maybe you need to really confine it in 2 months, 3 months. But somebody else can do it in 6. Everybody's a little different. That's the stuff that I find interesting on the high performing side. However, going back to teaching, like, that's not the majority of society. Like, we're still trying to get them to mount their scope right, or use torque wrenches to not crush a scope, or buy just somewhat decent quality items.
No, they want to get straight to being a grandmaster shooter or whatever.
Yeah. But I also don't want them to get, they jump into that, and then you get the defeatist mindset, right? Like, the two types typically you see is like, especially on the military side, you get a military guy go out and shoot a competition, and they don't do well. And it's fine. Again, that pie, like, they had so many other pieces to worry about, and not just that, but especially on the sniper side, I've worked with those guys, and if you took 10 of them, there's 5 or 6 that are like, I'm coming back to do this again, and I'm going to be better. And the other ones are like, competition's gay.
Yeah, because they didn't manage their expectations right.
Yeah, and it hurts the ego. Sometimes those guys come back eventually, and some of them, they're the ones you hear about talking trash about. I'm like, I got it, man. And, I've done training with some mill guys and stuff before, and they're like, yeah, I don't really shoot competition. And again, I don't care if you do or don't, but if you're in that space, you're going to talk trash about those that are doing it. And because it's what they love, whether they're civilian or military, whoever, it interests me. And then, so like, I'll kind of be like, okay, well, when you guys go to the range with your team
What do you
and
do?
you're training, what are you doing? And they're like, oh, well, Monday we do this, or like we'll shoot for the whole week. And then like, okay, well, what are you, one, I'm curious of what they're doing for training, is if I can help them at all. And two, or people that I work with, or do I know someone that can help? It's not all about me, or sometimes it is, but not always. But it's like, so what do you do as like Friday? Is there like a culminating event or whatever, and I don't want to call it competition, but because I know what they typically do, and it's like,
the answer to the question.
Yeah. So it's like, oh yeah, we get out there on Friday, we'll have like moving targets or something. We'll see who can shoot them the fastest or whatever. And then we'll do this and we'll see like, I was top shot last time. I was like, oh, so you're competing
within your tiny little group of people that never expands outside of that tiny little group.
But the other thing is they're sitting here saying like competition's dumb or whatever.
That's what I mean.
Want to use. And they're like, you're competing, man. It doesn't matter if it's in this space or a bigger space. It's like, and they're like, hey, oh, you got me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm not saying that you have to go compete at a match,
right,
but compete within yourselves, because it's only going to strive. I don't want to talk an absolutist statement, but I truly do feel that it's only going to make you better, or make your team better, or whoever you're trying to influence.
And it is possible to do that without going to a sanctioned match somewhere.
Yes. So I think people sometimes think of competition as just that, and it primarily is. When we talk about competition, we're talking about everything from the Olympics to a PRS match to a local USPSA match.
Vast spectrum there.
Yeah, right. And so a lot of these instructors may not compete, but they also do culminating events in their classes,
right,
which again push those students to go a little farther, get a little. They push the limits a little bit,
get into the discomfort zone a little bit more.
Because and you should. I mean, the limits of human performance. I used to not believe this. I don't think, or it just really wasn't a thought. But it's almost like not to be cliche about the movie, but it's limitless.
Yep.
It's crazy the stuff we're able to do. Like, I'm just a old, short, stocky, fat, like soldier that's almost retired, and like I move all right sometimes. And people are like, "What? You can do that? How do you do that?" I'm like, my mind over matter kind of thing. Like my mind, I let my brain do everything.
So yeah, I mean, you brought that up. You brought that mindset piece up earlier when the dude throws the Beretta at you, right, and just getting your mind right. And then also again when we're having fun at the match, in the Marine Corps or whatever.
Yeah.
You did so shitty. I'm going back to the mindset just with kind of where you are in your transition right now. And I wonder this because guys that have given so much and done so many things and made a career in the military, I mean, yours transitioned a few times through there. I think a lot of people do. Trying to make your way out of that, right, into the thing that you're doing now. There is no playbook for this, right? And so that leaves guys to their own devices trying to break into something that's very, very different like you're doing right now versus what you were doing. And you had a little taste, like you said, you had an LLC and you were kind of doing a little bit of this, so you had a little taste. But I just wonder where the mindset is now with regard to that, because there's a little bit of a contrast with respect to I have to have the mindset, this is competition. I've got to calm my nerves. I have to do this thing. I have to do it that way. And there's a process. And if I do that, I don't let my nerves get in the way or whatever else. That's one thing. This is different. Like, because you still had a job at the end of the day. Like you messed up that first stage. You did okay on the rest of them, but you messed up at the end of the day, you still had a job, right?
Yeah.
And it was a competition. You were shooting paper targets. And now you've worked with all these other guys, but now you're coming out and you're looking at it. There's a lot going on, man. I mean, you got a family, right? You've got a career to think about now. You're not an old man, right? you're not an old person, right? This is like chapter 3, maybe if that's what you want to call it, or chapter 4.
Actually.
Yeah. And the chapter hasn't been written yet, obviously. You have to kind of figure that out along the way. I think a lot of guys are coming out and they're trying to figure out what chapter 4, 3, whatever it is in their life and how to write it. And they don't know how to get into the right mindset to do that. And it's sad to watch the demise of what people will do. And let me be specific about this. So you're exploring these different things, and the advice that you got was, hey, dude, take it easy, Like, just go out there and figure it out. Don't
Mhm.
feel like you have to get it done today. All right, well, there's things that go into that. I have responsibilities, I have bills to pay, there's all of that, right? Creates stress, right? There's liability there, right?
Yeah.
So much different than it was. There's also the part about you, like you're at this thing here, and you're SHOT Show, big. You're running into people are maybe talking about sponsorships, or you're talking about partnerships, and you look at those things, and you don't know, you haven't done this before, right?
Yeah,
So
no.
you can very easily, and more importantly, sorry, the third part of this was you being you and having your name and not wanting to mess that up. That, all of those things, trying to delicately balance that. And it seems to me, in my time with you, going back to the you know who you are. But I see a lot of guys that I don't think really know who they are yet. And that meaning everything they've done for the last, let's say, 20 years or whatever it is, has been attached to this thing, right? Like, I am a Ranger, I am a Green Beret. I am a, or whatever. And I use the shooting space because it's relevant to what we're talking about. So there's a lot of that going on, and they don't know who they're going to be now after. And so they're coming into it in this weird space where they're putting a lot of pressure on themselves because they need to. I mean, there's some really real things they need to do there, again, to continue to pay the bills, but also feel relevant, also be relevant,
Yes.
and make a living. And when I say it's sad, I think those things get really out of balance for folks, and I see them really reaching, and their name gets tarnished because they got into a relationship that they didn't
Yeah.
fully understand who they were, so they didn't fully understand what they were signing on for. They're trying to do things that they're not really ready for because they haven't taken the space and the deep breath, that, going back to the advice that you've gotten, to just figure it out. Are you sure this is what you want to do?
Mhm.
It's okay not to be sure, but are you sure this is the path you want to go down right now? Again, like, the chapter's unwritten. Like, it's going to happen. You maybe don't know what it's going to look like in 6 months, a year, whatever. But are you sure you want to see what the chapter is that you're currently writing looks like? Or do you want to change course of fire right now?
Yeah.
Right. And go a different direction. So that was a lot. But I say all that to say, like, your thoughts on that, like, and kind of where you are now and how you balance all that and how you're taking that advice one day at a time, and how you come to a place like this and you hear the feedback that people are giving you, and maybe people are chasing you a little bit. Like, they're looking at this as an opportunity. I
Mm.
mean, here's a guy who's starting, and guys like you, just going to say, you're vulnerable.
Yes.
You're vulnerable
100%.
to fucking yourself up for the rest of your life, right? In a sense where you are in this process of identifying what it is that you're going to do and who you're going to be now, while being a husband, while being a father, while being a man, a son, a brother, and all of that stuff. I just wonder what your thoughts are on that, like how you're balancing and what you might be able to share. Because I see you doing goes back to you being genuine and kind of what I'm seeing, versus what I've seen some other folks do. And I think you're doing a really good job of it. But I wonder how aware you are of that, and if you can talk about it or not.
Yeah. So, from some of our just personal conversations, like, I wasn't really aware of it at first. And, kind of with the people wanting to start the shock factor of, like, their posts and things like that to garner attention.
Get attention, yeah.
I don't have that. But internally, I have a lot of things that I think about that I would never tell people. When you talk about performance and being, goal oriented or whatever, like, I'm going to go out here and just crush everybody today. Like, I'm going to.
Oh, I gotcha.
A buddy of mine has this saying. He's like, I'm going to suck the day's dick.
Yeah.
you know, like, it just, and it makes me laugh, but that's
he's not
the point.
saying it out loud. He's saying it to you, but that's the attitude he's going in with.
And so I've had, when I go compete, we have the things that we think in our heads. Some people shoot angry. Some people do perform better not angry. In the gym, you're intense. Right.
People approach it differently.
And so it's not that I don't think highly of myself inside. It sounds weird to say that out loud. But I'm realizing now that, like, one, on the business side, I don't say I have to do it, but it's sometimes I need to say, like, that I'm pretty good and this is why you should come train with me, or this guy's pretty good too, and it's okay. You can go train with him. It's not a big deal. But so as we've transitioned to this, I've never felt anxiety. I don't think I've ever been anxious until now.
You mean in life?
Yeah, in life or in the business. And so, like, you talk about the not having an end goal or not knowing necessarily what's next, the end state, or a hard and fast one.
Mm-hmm.
And because, like, it just, not that I'm not striving for it and putting in effort and stuff like that, but I'm at like 70% or maybe 80% and letting the remainder just kind of fall in place, because I've learned, at least in my life, the more I tried to force something, the less it was likely to happen. And so those doors end up closing instead of opening. For me, that's just what I've experienced, and whether it be just a job or a point in my life being with marriage,
right,
that you have ups and downs, man.
It's work. Yeah.
And so, like, you can strive for it. And if you have a bad relationship and you just devoted 100% into fixing it, you might be doing more damage than good. And I've been there, man. I care about it. And so I care, again, it goes back to caring about my name. But now I'm feeling things that, I've been doing something for 20 years as far as just being a part of this entity of the military. And I've had friends go out, and unfortunately some guys aren't with us anymore because they didn't know, they knew they wanted to do something, but they lost the purpose.
Right.
And so, like, yeah, I'm gonna go to college and do this. They had a plan outwardly, but they didn't have it internally, I guess, And so, like, life gets tough out there when you're not a part of the brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever, you're not part of that team anymore. It's just you. And so that one's been interesting to navigate. And I've been very, very fortunate because I think a lot of these guys talking to them, they feel alone. And the more I get out and I come to SHOT Show, like, this is an investment for me.
Right.
It's cost
me
tuition
money, payment, yeah.
And like, and my wife again was like, go, and so I'm building a new brotherhood and a sisterhood, so to speak, right? Like with you and a lot of other friends that I'm learning in the space. So I'm not doing it alone, and everyone has their like piece of the pie of advice they give me from things, whether it be like, if this is refreshing. And I've heard that a couple times recently. I'm like, I just don't think of it that way. I don't think of what I'm saying. I just ramble, and people are like, that was good. And I'm like, really? Because I don't listen to it back. I probably won't listen to this podcast. It's like an actor not watching their movie, But so I'm kind of battling a little bit of that, man. I'm I'll tell everybody, like, I'm seeking behavioral health for it because I don't know what that anxiety means. It doesn't feel like it's a negative thing. It's just like I'm anxious,
just trying to explore.
Like I want retirement to be yesterday so I can go do this thing, and feel like cut the leash loose and let me go.
High achievers do that, man.
But there's still that 20 to 30% that's the unknown, and that's not what's building the anxious. That's exciting to me. But the anxiety piece is like, this is my name, and attached to that name is my family, my kids, my friends. So I don't want to let, you're graciously giving me this opportunity. I don't want to let you down. I don't want to let my wife down. I don't want to let my friends down. So that's some, I think, where the anxiety comes from, and not knowing business. Like, but I mean, like, I've had guys tell me, some buddies that, I hang out with that are working the finance world, and they're working a banker, and they're like, look, man, I see these guys coming in and getting business loans, or I see, I work with these people, and everybody has different intellectual capacities, and they're like, dude, there's guys out there crushing it that don't have the bandwidth that a lot of other people are, and if they can do it, you can do it. So don't feel overwhelmed about it. Like, it might cost a little money to get a CPA or whatever, but like, just do it. Like, it'll be fine. You'll lose a little money here, you'll make it up there, and it'll take the stress off of you, and that way I can leave at 5 o'clock or whatever that thing is. I can get off Instagram and be part of my family, or be hanging out with my friends, and not just replying to every DM. So that's been a struggle. It's just, the balance is tough, and I wish I could say I'm crushing it.
It's a new pie chart.
Yeah, it really is. And I wish I could say I'm crushing it, but I'm terrible about just keep answering. Or if I wake up at 2 a.m. for some reason, I'm like, oh, DM. Now I'm up for another hour. I'm like, well, it's my fault, right? Like, I could have waited. So that's a interesting one I'm battling right now with all that. And kind of my purpose. I know my purpose. My purpose right now is to share what I've been fortunate enough to give. I mean, whether that's teaching firearms or helping companies, or at least I think I'm going to try to help companies. Maybe they're like, we didn't like that idea or whatever, but that's my purpose right now. And in 3 years, it could change. That's okay. I'm okay with that. Some guys, I've talked to mill guys in certain places, they go out and like they run, they teach tactics or whatever. And a lot of them say like, at 3 to 5 years is my lifespan, because after that, they're disconnected in their mind from where they're at. Things change. Things change. And it's like, cool, I'll go do it for 3 to 5 years. It don't mean I'm still not going to do something in that space after that, but there comes a point where like, I got to kind of know my expiration date. And so I know I have one on that space. I just don't know when it is. But I plan to keep competing. I've got a world championship coming up this year that I'm on the U.S. team for long range and stuff. Like, that's exciting. But I think that once I achieve that and go to that, I think I'm going to start transitioning to do some other stuff in the competition space. And I'm excited to do that. But right now that focus is this. That's bolt gun stuff. I want to transition to more gas gun stuff, and that's okay, man. Some people are like, you're good at this. You're pretty good at this. Why don't you keep doing that? I'm like, it's not that I'm denouncing anything, and I'm not saying I won't, but like, I have these things I want to do.
You have purpose.
Yeah. And I have a purpose. And so again, there's 20% of it that's unknown, whatever, but that's what's exciting.
I love that. I mean, that's a great answer in so many ways. That the two things that came up for me in that were having purpose and how important that is in everything. Without having a goal, then what are we doing? Right.
Yep.
And that goal doesn't have to be as clearly defined as maybe, these Instagram, self-help financial gurus would tell you, you got to do this, because you got to figure out some things first. And, I think people are trying to do that in a very speedy way. The other thing is the expiration date and the term relevance, which obviously comes up a ton. And specifically when we are talking about lethality and maybe what's going on in the world at a particular time, like on a tactics, from a tactics perspective, that's not what you're teaching. You've already been very clear about that. So that's not what this is. Shooting is still shooting, right? At the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think I just want to talk about the expiration date, because I hear that a lot. And two things can be true. Well, I think it's true. You're going to expire at some point, right? In terms of your relevancy or whatever. You choosing that or being worried about that expiration date. Two things are going to happen. Like, you're going to expire at some point, but I think the velocity at which you travel to that expiration date only increases if that's what you're worried about and focused on all the time. There are guys out there, right, that are doing similar things, let's just say in the space, that most said or are saying expired a long time ago. Yet, they're continuing to do a really good job with the things that they're doing. They're weaving and bobbing, and they're moving through, and they are doing their very best to stay relevant. Now, there could be a lot of argument from a lot of people. That's not what I want to get into. I don't even want to hear about that, because who am I? I'm just a fucking dude. But at the end of the day, like, they are not accepting, right? And I don't mean that they're putting out bad information and that's keeping them from expiring. They recognize that there is an expiration, and they don't want to find that. So they continue to push. They continue to be open about things. Sometimes there's consequences to this, in terms of being on the road, being away from the family, whatever else. But they are continually push hard. It's a high achiever kind of mindset. So, but yeah, the focusing on, I only have 3 years to do this in, well, that's a self-imposed limitation. And guess what's going to happen in 3 years? You're going to be expired, right?
Yeah, that's true.
That's it. So not worrying about it and the being okay with not knowing. And you mentioned the anxiety being partly, excitement. I think it's a strong lesson for people to look at, just in terms of reframing kind of where they are and the desperation they might feel, and kind of the anxiousness they might feel, and like, I have to get this done right now. Now, I also understand there's financials that come along with that, right? There's all kinds. There's time with the kids. There's relationships. There's all kinds of things that come on with that. But you mentioned a good thing, and that was the harder you fight it, and that's the sole purpose or the sole focus. Well, that it can be a very double-edged sword, I think, is what you were kind of saying. Like, you have to be. I said this before, in the immortal words of Ferris Bueller: if you don't the world moves pretty fast. If you don't step back and take a look around, you just might miss it and miss those opportunities or those open doors, that you've been talking about, that you've had through your journey, and miss the opportunities for when people are there with their hand out to help you. Not look at that as anything other than take it at face value. Sometimes people just want to help. There isn't an underlying motivation or agenda that's evil all the time. And I get in this, again, in the context of this conversation, in this space, that can be very easily the default, because there's a lot of bullshit that goes on. But again, going back to the table I was sitting at the other night, right, with you and those other characters that we were just talking about. that's a perfect example of, we're not going to agree on everything, right? We have different methodologies to solve the same problem, and that's perfectly okay.
It's okay, man.
It's okay, and we can talk about that stuff and we can disagree about it. But at the end of the day, if the intention, right, is to do what you said, which is help people get better, right, and solve problems and feel more capable, and at whatever level, whether that's in some specialized unit to Scott Howell, who doesn't know shit about fuck, when he shows up to the long range and he's just drinking from a fire hose, one way or another, having that purpose, right, and having that intention, I think solves a lot of fucking problems. And what I mean by problems, I think the social problem that exists sort of in the space that I see you kind of walking into, just going, I don't really have the time or the energy for that. Like, I've got things to do. Not exactly sure how that's going to work out for me. I'm totally cool with that. But in the meantime, I'm not here to make enemies and make a big splash.
Yeah, it just adds to the anxiety and stress.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
You know,
that's exactly what I was just going to say.
I talk to Mark from JBS a lot, probably it's sometimes every day, and we've become really good friends. And, but he has a thing where he says, well, who am I? Like, how did I get here? Like, that's what he says, like, because he was only ever civilian, used to be a plumber and stuff. And he does this, and he does pretty successful at it, I think.
He's doing a great job.
And I look up to him on business, and he helps me understand space. And he's one of those guys, man, just don't worry about it. Don't stress over that. Like, yeah, the money, I get the money, in making money and putting food on the table, but he's like, you'll be just fine. And he's a very religious man. Yeah. But he comes back like, who am I? And I think about that sometimes, because again, it's not something that I thought of in those words,
right? But
I did think of it sometimes, like, how did I get here? I'm not crazy religious or anything like that, but it's like, man, this door opened. How did it open? Everybody has their belief on that. And that's kind of where, like, I used to stress out about stuff. I was pretty high, the Lance Corporal, Sergeant in the Marine Corps, just like, knife hand, yelling, like.
But you have to go through that.
It got my blood pressure up now, and now I'm just kind of like, hey, 70% of the time it's going to work, 30% of the time it won't. That's okay. I wake up in the morning, I'm home, or I'm alive.
Right.
And so it's taken me a long time. I mean, 39, almost 40 years old. And it's taken me a long time to really understand that. And it's been in 2023. It's kind of really when the light bulb came on. And I had those light bulb moments in my life where, with the, shooting, like I said, when I was standing up there shooting at Camp Perry or things like that, and I see it in other people too. And I genuinely want to help most people. I won't say everybody, unfortunately, because some people don't want to help themselves.
Good, man. Yeah, I mean, because you can't too. You just can't.
And but then I have people in space. Again, like last night, I'm out to dinner with another group of guys that are doing the same thing I want to do, and they're excited for me, like genuinely, like to the point where, and I'm excited for them, and they're like, "No, man, like literally, like you can't do anything for my business. I could have you do this, this, and this." And he's like, "I'm already maxed out on selling this product. I'm already sold out all these classes. So like, you cool, it'd be good for optics, but like I can't sell any more product and I can't sell any more classes. So like, I just want to help you though. Anything you ever need." I'm like, you talk about me being genuine, like that's the genuine shit right there.
Right.
And so
that does exist out there.
Yeah.
And,
so
it's wild. For the consumer, the existing coach, the aspiring coach, the manufacturer, right? That has a product, or something in the space that is looking to have relationships, but is just so turned off by things or is just unsure. I think the point where you just made there is like, this shit exists. It's not a super popular Instagram post, right? To talk about it. And if you don't listen to this podcast in this long format, you're not gonna hear about it. But I get the sense, and again, this is my second SHOT Show, right? I get the sense in walking around and seeing the people that I've built relationships with, but more importantly, recognizing again, like going back to my question, like, how did I get at this table? I can tell you exactly how. And it was through people, right? It's just one connection after another, and it was good people connecting with other good people. If people spent more time doing that and just being like open and honest, like you're doing right now, fuck, the better world will be a whole better place. That's a whole other podcast. But that said, like, man, when we sat down, I'm like, I got to hear more about how we got to where we are. And again, you filled in so many blanks for me. And that was my intention in sitting down, is just to understand Scott at a better level. I've seen you shoot. I've seen you and heard you talk about shooting. there's no doubt in my mind, if I got a question about that, then I can come to you and I'm going to get an answer. But I want to know the whys behind the answer. And I think you filled in a lot of that. And my hope is, as you're kind of going down your path here and you're trying to figure it out, as people are looking for connections, and I don't mean like a business connection. I mean a connection with the coach. I mean a connection with knowledge. I mean connections with people, the circles within the circles. Go back to the Venn diagram and all the things people have to do. I look at things like a Venn diagram, like, all right, so there's this distance shooting thing. How many spaces do they touch, right? And how do you bring more people together that they'll hear this or they'll listen to this in a week, in a month, in a year, while you're continuing your process to fill in the gaps in their own Venn diagrams, right? In their own pie charts or whatever, to understand, like, who is this person? Who are these people? Where is this coming from? And is what I see or I hear, can I match that up, beyond the 30-second soundbite you might get somewhere, or the third-party review, somebody goes to a class that went to another person's class and they're making this compare and contrast. That's why I do the show, right? It's just is to give people the information, and seek it, and also share it, just like you're trying to do. So, I mean, that's the mission of this thing, right? Is just to share good things, because again, like, I just happen to be in a position to be able to have these amazing conversations with people, learn a ton. I was like, man, maybe other people want to hear this shit too. I mean, and it turns out they do. So
we like talking. I listen, I listen to some of your podcasts, and like you said, like everybody, I say everybody, a lot of the guys that, especially even the high performers in this space, some of them do Instagram or social media better than others, whatever. They have different approaches, and it doesn't make them wrong. Like, some people do the shock factor, but there's a reason behind it. And that's, I think, if you don't have a reason, okay, that kind of makes it like, all right, well, I'm just going to dismiss you. But if you have a reason for kind of being the abrasive guy or whatever out there in the space, but you're putting out good info, but you're doing it because people need to hear the hard truth. I'm more of a, once you get to when we're in a private space, I'll tell you the hard truth, but I don't have a desire to put it out there publicly. And maybe that changes in a couple of years. Maybe I've just become an asshole.
Maybe.
I don't know. And that's part of the excitement of life, right? But, I do stuff differently, but like you said, we're problem solving. Shooting a shot on a target is a problem. That's the problem. You got to solve it, right? So, like, engaging anything, whether it be a fight or a gunfight, or shooting competition, you're solving problems. And how do you do that? And how you do it efficiently? And that's what I care about. Like, how can we solve the problem? And we may have different paths to get to the end of to solve that problem. And the person I look up to the people that can do it very efficiently. And so, because I want to be like that, and that's what's got me here. And I've learned that I do it a little bit better than some people. I tell everybody, like, I'm the worst shooter on my team. Really. Like, I really am. People are like, who's the best? Whatever. Are you the best? I'm like, no, man, I'm not. They're like, well, you're pretty good. So, like, people are better. I'm like, not only are people better, dude, they blow me out of the water.
Gap in you. Yeah.
There's a huge gap. And I'm like, think it goes back to the possibilities of human performance, right? Like, with just that alone with a firearm, and it's something that's not seen much, because, again, all those guys are kind of low key too. Like, they train the guys, they train themselves, they go to a competition, and they just kind of, like, they go fish or fly drones or whatever they do as a hobby.
Yeah.
And, like, people know their name in that specific area, and that's it. They're totally fine with that. And somebody sees a clip of something, they're like, that's sped up, right?
That's possible.
They sped that up, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or something. And, like, I don't know. That's
another limit. That's why, going back to the self-imposed limitation.
Yeah.
You're already creating a barrier, and that barrier then gets met with all the reasons to justify why you have that barrier, and then sometimes it turns into anger or ridiculousness, or somebody makes a big mistake in doing or saying something that they end up regretting, sort of in the long run, that they can't take back or walk back from, or it takes an entire lifetime to undo or walk around or apologize for or whatever. So yeah, so many nuggets in this one, man. I think for people coming up, and for just to share the experience of somebody that's coming out of something and into the next thing. A lot of the conversations I have with people, they've already done that.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how we got connected. Or people that are maybe thinking about it, haven't gone through their journey. Like, you're smack dab in the middle of that part of the journey. And I think there's a lot of things people can take away from it. I think there's a lot of perspective there. And, you touched on a couple of really important parts, just about taking care of the important things and, your mental health, your family, balancing things, just taking a deep breath, acknowledging what's really going on. But taking the time to process was one of the other things, that came up for me. When somebody tells you that's really refreshing, or I really appreciate the way you handle this. I have a tough time with that too.
Yeah.
Like just kind of like, man, that sounds weird.
It does.
Thank you. I overdo that word all the time because I don't know what to do with that at the time, but then I walk away and I process it. And, I try to really think about that. And
they'll lead it with like, hey, no homo, but whatever. I'm not just, and it's like,
sometimes
I did something with Joe the other day, just a last minute Instagram live. And there was a reason that was done. And it was over some shock factor posts and stuff like that. And then we started talking. We didn't script it beforehand. We didn't even say and somebody hit me up, was like, we knew what that was about, but you guys didn't trash that person or those people.
we just had that conversation yesterday with somebody else.
And we just talked and we told our thoughts on something. And even in the part of that, like Joe and I, you could kind of tell that Joe and I didn't even, again, the end result is the same, but we had a different approach to it, and that was cool. And somebody hit me up and was like, hey man, that was refreshing. And like, you're quick to smile. And I'm like, grown man just told me I'm refreshing and quick to smile, and I'm like, how do I handle that?
It's a positive thing, man.
Yeah. And it's interesting. And those are the new things to me. I'm not used to that. Right. Yeah. Like, on that side. So,
just keep enjoying that, man. Just keep figuring it out. I mean, I can't wait to see what's going on. I mean, let's talk real quick as we wrap this up. You got your first class, like public, class that's coming up. You're actually decided, which is awesome for us Californians. You actually decided to do in California.
Yeah. I had a couple guys that were in Cali, reached out and wanted to do a class, and they got one on the books yet. And I'm like, no, I'm just like still figuring this out while I have a paycheck coming.
Right.
And they're like, well, you're coming to California. And I'm like, okay, what are we doing? He's like, gas gun. I'm like, gas gun in California? Okay, cool. Let's do it.
What we got.
And next thing I know, the class is full. And I'm like, shit. Like, all right, I got to book travel that's on my own and book, figure out the hotel. And then it's like, I find it exciting, and then it turned into, I'm going to get to see you. I'm going to come out there. It turned into like, it's a 2-day class, but now I'm going to be there for like 10 days. And I'm going to go attend Joe's class.
Turns out there's a bunch of other guys.
Yeah. And it's all in the same space. And when I found out about, like, I didn't know Joe had a class the same, like a weekend before that. So I told Joe, I'm like, I apologize, dude. I wasn't trying to encroach your territory. And he's kind of like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Like, if I could come to your class, I'd make it. And I'm like, well, I'm coming to yours. And he's like, right on, so I'm going to go to this class, and Mark's going to be there. Mark's coming to my class. I tried to let him in for free, and he wouldn't do it.
I'm trying to hit all you guys in the same week too, man.
Yeah. And so I'm excited about it. Like I've done classes again, like just private stuff, but it's my first like time to put my name out there.
It's exciting.
It's super exciting. Dude.
I remember the same thing, man. I was trying to kind of transition back out of the big corporate game. I had a lucrative job that was paying me a lot. It was kind of all lined out. Like, here's the schedule, here's what you do or whatever. And one day I knew I couldn't do that anymore for a lot of reasons. And, what does that start with? Well, it starts with calling up your friends, right? It starts with having that first session and getting that first client that turns into 2, that turns into 4, that's the most exciting time. When I look back at kind of that stuff, as stressful as it was, and as much as I thought I knew going in, that I know now that I really didn't know and all that stuff, it is the best time, right, to just kind of figure it all out. I'm excited to see you out there. There's, people in California are privileged to get anything they can get, on the farm. Yep. So we're behind the wall out there. So, I appreciate guys coming in from other parts of the country to share knowledge. Well, it's not that we don't have a bunch of them in California that do that well, but there's just, like the conversation with Joe, there's plenty of pie. We have a lot of pie. California is riddled, with good, red-blooded, 2A11, Americans that just want to go out there and shoot their guns. And so anytime they can grab a little knowledge, hang out with their buddies and do it, it's
and a beautiful range, or where this is going to be is.
Yeah, you showed me a couple of shots. Yeah,
it's like
I've never shot at anything like that before, so it's gonna be great.
That place exists, and I'm excited as a student. Like, I get to teach there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keep that part. I think that's what keeps it fun until you start looking at it differently. I don't have to do this. I get to do this.
Yeah,
right.
Like I couldn't do it without the people that follow me or want to pay me for it's their time and stuff away from their families. And I get that. Like, didn't always understand that. And I still don't understand it completely, but I respect it, and I've been there, and that's what, I don't know. That's me.
So where do they go to find out more about you, your classes, all that stuff?
Right now I've got some, website stuff coming up, and I don't even have a logo, but we're still working on that.
I love this part. Yeah. This is the struggle, man.
Yeah, this is
the grind
whatever.
of being an entrepreneur.
Like, I don't know if I feel like if the logo is what makes me a successful businessman, then I'm probably like,
amen.
I don't know.
Amen. But don't go spending $10,000 on logo design,
But so Veracity Solutions altogether on Instagram, all one word or whatever. Like I have some personal stuff too, but I try to keep my personal stuff and my business stuff separate.
Thank you.
It's my goal.
I appreciate that.
And it's not to hide anything. It's just, it's not relevant in my opinion to what I'm trying to do. Like, cool. And when I step out the door and for this next chapter, like I will use obviously some of that for the more recent stuff as the resume, but like, I don't know. I'm gonna close that door and take off the uniform or whatever, and like that's cool. Like that's cool. The people that continue to bring that to everything they do and they talk about it, and it's a sticker on their truck. But man, that's not who I am truly. So like, I'll close that door and I'll be excited and happy that I did it for 20 years, and say that I've hopefully made an impact on at least one person's life in that time. But I'm gonna take that off and move on to the next thing. I'm pretty excited for it.
I'm excited to watch it happen, and huge fan. If there's anything I can do to help and support you along the way, you know where to find me.
Yeah, man. You've done a lot already. We've had a lot of good conversations.
Well, thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Thanks.